Okay, going live. Here we go. Going live. ...
Hello and welcome to Nottingham. Welcome back to Nottingham for those of you who joined us yesterday at the UK National Championships. We are here watching the mixed semi-final between Reading and Deep Space, a basically annual matchup at this point. They've played several times at this stage to try and find who's going to be going into the final to vie for the mixed title here. My name is Sean Colfer and I'm joined by Kat Cheng. How are you doing this morning, Kat?
I'm good. I'm feeling fresh. How about you, Sean?
Yes, doing well. Looking forward to this game. It's, as I say, it's been basically an annual matchup. Reading have had the upper hand last year, but Deep Space have beaten them in the past. Both these teams, very high quality. Both have added some really good players this year, so looking strong position to compete for the title. You would assume against Smog, but Leamington Lemmings have been growing and have been impressive so far in this championship as well. So we'll see how it goes. We've had both teams falling over a little bit so far. Alvaro Itamendi saving possession for Deep Space with a fantastic layout after Ruth Cordron slipped on the reset. It's now with Denniston. One of Deep Space's long-time players. Denniston finds Amala. Amala to Itamendi. Itamendi looking to get it off that sideline. Doesn't like where Amala is positioned. He's got a pretty high stall now. Finds Elliot Cook. Australian import. And there is a contested stall, I believe, on Itamendi. It looks as though Joe Brown had his hand on his head. Very intense D point from Reading so far, Kat.
Yeah, Itamendi definitely had the disc for quite a while. Looked up for Amala for quite a few seconds for that reset. Ryan Kuhn shutting him down there. And then eventually found the pass up to Cook. But was it a stall out? We will see.
So it is 1-0 so far. Joined us a little late with some technical issues, but it is 1-0 to Reading. They scored an offensive hold. There was a turn for both teams in that point. A drop in the end zone from Reading. And then Deep Space's vertical stack got a little bogged down, and it was another slip on the mark. As I say, there was a bit of rain yesterday, and I think a little overnight as well, so it's quite a damp pitch over there. So it looks as though both teams are struggling to find their footing a little bit, and from the hand signals, I would say that the stall count has been retracted, and the disc will stay with the former lunchbox player, Elliot Cook, on the end zone line. He's got Layla Denniston already isolated in that space. Pretty good position to be in. And Cook shoots to the end zone and finds Denniston to level the scores up at 1-1, a clean hold for Deep Space.
Yeah, really nice to see them working it through their players around the pitch, different parts of the pitch, using their breaks, their swings, and punching that into Denniston for their first goal of the game. So we are 1 apiece to Reading and Deep Space.
So Reading have added quite a few players, as I mentioned earlier. They've added some players from other mixed teams and also from the women's division. Got Molly Wedge, Laurel Piper, Izzy Collins and Sarah Jeffrey all coming over from Bristol Women, and Becky Thompson, captain of Iceni last year, has joined this team as well. And then Alex Greer and Rachel Naden, GB Women's captain, have come down south from Smog. Am I missing anybody? Kat, that's off the top of my head.
Stevie Millard from Smash D, and any other open players?
I think that's it. You're right.
Alex Greer from Smog also is the other open player they brought across.
So added some quite good players. Deep Space also have some additions, although two of them are on the line here. We have Hannah Yorworth, who's come down from Spice, and then we also have long-time sick player Georgie Hill, who's come to play in the mixed division with Deep Space alongside Fee Ray, also from Sick.
And then Alana Archer is the other Spice member that has joined Deep Space this season.
So Sam Vile, GB mixed player, former World Games coach, gets the pull out. And Reading start their second offensive point. Naden comes underneath. Instead goes over to Wong on the far side. Hogan clears the space and Lewis comes back. Hogan's carrying on that cut, but Lewis decides to come back to Withers. Deep Space playing quite soft on those marks, allowing the swings back and forth, but trying to prevent any downfield movement. So Wedge and Naden both have loads of space, but with the handle marks sagging off. It's difficult to get it there. Wilson now in the centre of the field. To his GB mixed teammate Lewis. And a poach by Nikki Koshov to try and get that disc. But Hogan spots the poach, goes deep and catches the goal. He had a drop in the end zone on the last point, so he'll be very pleased to remedy that with a score and put Reading up 2-1.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, Wilson and Lewis are GB mixed counterparts on both grass and indoor surfaces. Nice to see them representing GB in different areas and different pitch surfaces.
Can't think of who else played on that GB mixed indoors team, Kat. You know anyone else who played on that team?
Becky Thompson.
Well, I was thinking more you, to be fair.
Yeah, and I did. But we came back with our silver medal back in December. So nice to see these my teammates from there representing Reading on this stage.
So Reading up 2-1. Their captain, Emma Klima, holding the disc, getting ready for the pull. And a very similar line for deep space, although we have a couple of changes from the last point. Fee Ray and Omar Khan both out here as well. Deep space, who did lose a few players to Clapham, Tom Davis, Max Squires and Dan Hillman were all part of the squad early in the season, but then Clapham made their selections and all three made the team. They are here with Clapham, although I believe Squires has picked up an injury so isn't playing. But all three on the Clapham squad, so deep space could have been looking very strong, could have been stronger, but they're looking in a good position early in this game to make this an intriguing matchup. So Khan now with the disc finds Caudron, who lays out to reel it in. Caudron fakes the deep shot, but goes deep to Layla Denniston with a nice inside flick, and Denniston goes around to Claire Baker, and Baker catches it in the end zone. Nice, easy, quick hold for deep space there after Caudron take possession.
Yeah, that's two clean holds, one apiece from deep space and Reading, showing what they are capable of on their O-lines.
Caudron, a long-time Reading player, played for Reading for a very, very long time. After coming back from, she was at Reading University, I think, so from uni all the way through to moving to London. I think last year she was a Reading player, so knows her opposition here extremely well.
Yeah, and has done her time with GB Women this season, and EUC last month. So great to see her representing in the mixed division as well as the women's.
Yeah, it was, I think at the start of the tournament, was maybe one of the lesser known players on the GB women's team because she's come over from mixed. But by the end of the tournament was on some of their key lines, some of their called lines in key moments. So did a really good job for GB women when they were winning their very deserved and very impressive silver medals. So Ali Thomas getting ready to pull here to get another point started. I've only seen 2 turnovers in this game so far. It's been a good start from both offenses. Saville chasing that pull down. He's right on it. And we are seeing a deep space zone look here. So box around the stack. 3 people at the front. So Reading taking the open swing movement that the zone is offering them. Wilson threw the cup to Hogan. Reading trying to make sure that this doesn't stick too much. Moving it from side to side. It's Lewis now. She chooses to throw that upside down rather than the backhand through the stack or through the cup that Wilson threw. And it's Wilson now with the disc. Goes over the deep to Molly Wedge. That is an absolutely perfect flick from Sam Wilson for that score.
Yeah, Reading did a really nice job there of moving the cup around. They just kept going backwards and forwards across the pitch, waiting for that opportune moment. Sam Wilson took that flick beautifully to Molly Wedge deep in the end zone. Gilboy was close, but not close enough on this occasion.
I don't know if he expected that throw to come because that is an aggressive option and you need to have that perfect. With the edge on that, Wedge doesn't really have an option. If it's sailing overhead, there's no second bid at that. So pinpoint from Wilson.
And Reading found the spaces behind rather than trying to go through the middle. I think that's what the deep space zone was trying to get them to do, but Reading recognised that really quickly, played round the back between 4 or 5 players until that opportune moment that Wilson identified.
Wilson, another player with who will know some of the opposition extremely well. His brother, Dan is on the deep space roster. Looks as though he's picked up an injury and isn't playing in this game. Over on the far side there, but they'll obviously know each other quite well.
And there's a third Wilson brother as well, Ben. Not playing for Reading at the moment.
He's playing for Reading Open this weekend.
Okay, not on the mixed team at the moment. But we have seen him play mixed previously alongside Holly Caldwell.
Yes. The Cordron with the disc now for Deep Space's offense. Been clean so far, 2 clean holds. Cordron to Ray. Reading sticking with match marking. See downfield, Denniston marked by Thompson. Cook looking for Denniston, who's got separation and brings it down with the right hand. Great shot from Cook and a great catch from Denniston.
Yeah, we've seen Layla Denniston use her height to her advantage, and she went up early there to make sure of that disc. But we've also seen her put her body on the line multiple times, so we'll see what other prowess she can bring to this game.
Had an absolutely beautiful layout block in the final of EUC. Was close on another layout block as well in the end zone. She was brilliant for GB. Struggled with injury a little bit in the early stages, but in the later stages was just absolutely fantastic for that GB women's team.
And I believe has done some time in the States across the pond recently.
Playing with New York Exist this year, which is very exciting, seeing her go over and compete against the best players in the world. I mean, the US Nationals is about as high level as you're going to get in the world, so watching her go over there and compete with those players is going to be very, very exciting.
Yeah, bringing back the skills and experience to this team and seeing if she can push Deep Space to the next level.
So Deep Space already finding a good level here. That's another clean hold for their offense. Thrown 26 passes, every single one of them completed. It's 3-3. Both teams trying different defensive looks to try and take their opposition out of their comfort zone at the moment, Kat.
Yes, it'll be good to see if Deep Space come out with their zone again. We'll see what their primary defensive look is for this point.
So Lewis catching the ball for Reading and centering to Hogan. It's back to this saggy match from Reading. It's a little bit of miscommunication. There's 2 people coming under, but it comes to Withers right on this sideline. Back in the centre to Lewis. And still the Deep Space handle marks just allowing those resets. Hogan goes deep looking for Wedge against Yorworth. And Yorworth does enough to put Wedge off. Don't know if she got a hand on it, but definitely made it difficult for Wedge to bring that down. Yeah,
Yorworth definitely took position, so it meant Wedge had to go up and over her. I think Wedge got a hand to the disc, but just not able to stop its rotation and bring it down for her possession. So Deep Space have a chance to break here.
Yep, Deep Space with their second chance of the game to break. And it starts with Vile on the end zone line. Breaks to Moss, very close from Wilson to getting a run through. Even Callahan at the position he's in. Break from Moss to Koshov. Koshov right on the sideline. Reading playing very tight, very intense D here. And Lewis catches at Callahan on Koshov's reset. There's just no space for any of the Deep Space players there, and Koshov trying to go around the mark to Vile. Lewis read it straight out of his hand.
Yeah, Sam Wilson was so close earlier, and we know how fast Sam Wilson's got to be. He must be one of the fastest male matching players in the mixed division, I think. But on this occasion, yeah, Andy Lewis just read that play like a book.
He did. Koshov and Lewis and Wilson, all on the GB mixed team, know each other very well, as was Vile, another one involved in that play. But yeah, Koshov tries to bend it round and just didn't quite get enough on it. But the Reading O-line has turned it over twice, but their D on both those turnovers has been absolutely outstanding. They have been so close to every single pass. They've been making everything really difficult. And Deep Space's D-line, while they've got those turns, don't seem to be making much progress with them.
Yeah, so we'll see. We're on serve at the moment. So Reading D-line coming out with 4 women. Emma Klima getting ready for the pull. And we'll see what offensive look Deep Space bring.
Yeah, Deep Space, as we've said, have been going through the Reading D pretty comfortably so far. It's 4-3 now to Reading. 4-3 to Reading. On serve so far.
Teams are almost evenly matched with numbers as well. Although I know both teams are carrying at least one injury. But numbers-wise, they are fairly evenly matched.
So Reading with match again, and it's Cook to Denniston. tried and tested pairing, getting deep space started. So Fee back to Cook to Cordrin. Cordrin turns down the throw to Baker. Instead around to Amala. Amala to Denniston. Denniston throws that lefty flick break to Alvaro Otamendi, and it's another clean hold for deep space.
Yeah, that was a slice from Denniston. She had to throw that laser beam fast, but if she had thrown it softer, I wonder if the defense might have come and made a play.
Yeah, maybe. Absolutely arrowed it into Otamendi, but the Spain Open player catching it without too much bother. And certainly now it looks as though Deep Space's offense is in a great rhythm. Reading are going to have to try and find a way to disrupt it because nothing they've tried so far has come close, really.
No, I think we've mostly seen match defence from Reading so far, so it'll be interesting to see if they decide to change things up, see if they force middle or perhaps try a zone look. Weather doesn't kind of lend itself to zone just at the moment. It's quite still. There's not really much in the way of wind. The trees aren't really moving and there's no flags to tell you which way the wind is blowing at the moment. So Reading may stick with the match it is, putting pressure on deep space and generating those turns.
So the Reading O-line getting set again, very familiar looking O-line, and deep space D-line. Also a lot of familiar faces. It's Alana Archer, as we said, coming down from Spice this year, who is holding the disc and getting ready for the pull. So good pull from Archer. And Reading catch it, Hogan underneath it as usual. Lewis goes deep, and you can see deep space playing the same kind of saggy handler marks in the center, but Gilboy much tighter on Hogan now. Wong with the disc. Wong tries to come around to Wilson, and even a player with Wilson's speed can't catch up on that one. And deep space looking to start quickly. Gilboy looks back to Koshov. Lewis poaching off Koshov, seeing if there's any lanes he needs to fill. But Koshov now with the disc. Deep space been pushed backwards already. Hogan on Gilboy. Gilboy trying to shake free, but good D from Hogan. Hill to Rowe. Rowe looking for an option now. Comes back to Hill. To Rowe again. Looking at Yorwith now. Molly Wedge gets her arm in there. Looks as though it's a foul call. It did look as though there was some contact, and it's been accepted.
Yeah, it looked like Molly just came in from behind. Got a hand in there, but not without contacting Hannah Yorwith first.
Yorwith now looking for Rowe. Good D, and there's a pick as there's some moving around in the stack. Looks as though Kemp just got in the way of Hogan marking Gilboy. So Yorwith looking at Gilboy. Throws that lefty around, and Molly Wedge gets her hand on that and knocks it away. And Reading turning down that fast up.
Yeah, Molly with those high hands, and maybe just anticipating what Yorwith was looking for. I don't know if she did a shoulder check. Molly's very good at that. She always checks to see the next threat or the next pass. Gives Reading the disc back.
Been training together all year as well, so might have helped knowing Yorwith's secrets. So with Hogan now, after a nice inside throw, Lewis attacks that front cone. Nothing there. It's Naden. To Hogan. Gilboy drops off the mark to try and fill in space. Reading playing their usual 1-6 offense, and Sam Wilson just beats Duncan Rowe to the front cone and secures that score for Reading. But that's 3 turns now for the Reading O-line. They're creaking a little bit.
And that pull to start this point off from Archer, although it might not, it kind of got to about brick mark, it hung for a long time, which gave the deep space players time to run down, to stop that first pass, to put that pressure on. And actually, is that a tactical thing, or is that just the way that she pulls? But either way, it is effective for deep space. So intense pressure there, but Reading able to capitalise.
So that's still trading, still all holds at this stage. But that's turns for Reading on the last 2 O points, and that's 3 turns in 5 points for them. But still their O-line D, very good. They've now got a point block, a Callahan, and forced to throw away, I believe, in those 3 points, which is for 3 points we have to play D. That's not too bad of an outcome.
And when these two teams met at mixed regionals in the final, it was 14-11 to Reading. So I think it was close for most of the way, and then Reading just eked away towards the end. So we'll hope for a similar rematch in this semi-final, keeping it nice and close.
So Reading getting ready to pull now to deep spaces O-line.
Quite like that synchronised clap and hand up to signify they're all ready, similar to is it Colombia that have a synchronised method before the pull comes up in the game.
Cook with the disc. Amala is back in his own end zone. It's a good pull and good pull coverage from Reading.
There is a mismatch, gender mismatch. Becky Thompson on Cook and Denniston with Hill downfield.
So an interesting choice, and Reading do go deep space, do go deep, and Stevie Millard rips it out of the air for the turnover. Looks for Jeffrey, but it's just thrown too far for Jeffrey to bring in. So Reading's D-line gets an opportunity, but can't execute. Millard back to Stephen. Amala. There's a pick downfield very, very early.
A lot of players clustered in that middle space. If they're doing Ho, they should spread out a bit more to avoid some of those picks.
So Cook playing centre handler, marked by Thompson. Thompson chasing to try and get that mark on. Cook looking deep. Now looking back at Amala. Amala goes up the line. Cook shoots, but Millard again knocks it away. 2 turns in 1 point. It's the first time we've seen that in this game. And Reading's D-line finally finding something that is working.
Yeah, that first D interception he got, he had to rise high, but was able to bring that down. That one almost thrown straight to him.
And deep space have switched so that Denniston is now marking Thompson, and Millard goes deep looking for Brown, who lays out but just drops between his hands as he gets there. Would have been an incredibly difficult catch to make.
Yeah, the angle on that disc was a really tough one for Reed. We know Joe Brown will put his body on the line, but on that occasion, if it could have just been a little bit more floaty so he could run onto it, that would have been beautiful.
Thompson back on Cook, almost gets the block there, and Khan with some space goes deep looking for Itamendi, one of the fastest players in the division as well, and he catches it under pressure from Coons pretty comfortably, and that is a deep space hold, but Reading had some opportunities there.
Yeah, absolutely. Itamendi there setting off, and Ryan Coons did his best to keep up with him, but similarly to Sam Wilson, as soon as they have 1 or 2 steps, it's really hard to make up that ground.
We see Millard walking off with his head down after that point. He had 2 blocks, played really, really well to get those 2 blocks, but also through both turns. Maybe a little bit of youthful exuberance, I suppose you could call it, just not quite getting into the offense after the turn.
Yeah, he does hail from Smash D originally and Loughborough University, so will have played mixed and open fairly regularly, but we will see how he fares for the rest of this game, see if he can generate any more turns for Reading.
He's been playing very well for them. This is his first year with Reading mixed. It's been a huge addition to the D-line, as we saw on that last point with both those blocks. I mean, one block was good reading of the D, and the other block was just outright athleticism, really.
Yeah, and the elite invite and Burn, I'm sure he had a huge layout block in one of their games as well. So showing what he's capable of on defence for Reading.
So Deep Space's D-line has got turns on the last couple of points, and they're coming out here again. Vile with the pull. We've got Hogan, Withers and Wong back for Reading, as Wong centres to Hogan. It's back to match again with deep space, and they're a little tighter on the handlers this time, although Thomas is dropping off Wong. Wedge looking in field to Lewis with a very acrobatic grab as the throw slightly behind him, and he's going to have to call injury there as he landed on his shoulder, it looks like.
Yeah, it looked quite intense. He obviously landed and rolled, but it might just be the impact was just a bit much, and maybe conserving himself for the rest of the day, decides to take an injury sub. So we hope he's okay. We hope to see him back on the field soon.
Joe Brown comes on for Reading. So Brown on the disc. Goes back to Wong. Wong has Wilson. Brown, who had lots of space underneath there. So Withers and Collins. Collins has to go up high, use all of her height there. Withers to Brown. Reading's offense slowing down slightly here. It's Withers looking for Hogan. Inside break to Hogan. Two options on the break side, doesn't like them. Instead throws the scuba to Wilson. Wilson brings it in. The offense slowed down slightly, but they're able to move it. But it does look as though there is a pick called, and the pick has been retracted, so it is a goal.
Yeah, nice movement there from Reading, utilising a whole variety of throws. And as you say, Izzy Collins rising to take that disc high, making sure. Nice to have a tall female receiver. Definitely.
Izzy, her sister Tash, I think, is playing for Bristol this weekend. The two of them have been very effective weapons for Bristol's D-line in the last couple of years. Both tall, both have very reliable hands. Deep space there, moving some of their matchups around slightly. Ali Thacker, one of the fastest female matching players in the division, has been matching up against Rachel Naden for a lot of this game. Recognizing, well, I'm sure Deep Space recognizing Naden's talent as a deep receiver.
At that last point, she had the matchup of Molly Wedge, so keeping pressure on, and actually meant that Wedge may not have been thrown to as much. So credit to Thacker for putting the pressure on and making the Reading throwers think twice.
Yeah, so we are still on serve. No breaks yet. 6-5 to Reading. Last point, Reading were able to get their first turns on the deep space offense, and they pose some questions. It's a 4 female matching player point here, so I wonder what we'll see with Layla Denniston. We saw a male matching player marking her. It looks as though it's Emma Klima taking that matchup this time around. So Marla with the disc, looking for an option. Greer tries to jump that and get a hand in the way, but just out to Caudron. It's Baker on the disc now, looking downfield. Knight poaches the lane, but Itamendi runs through it and has the disc on the sideline. Back to Baker. Deep space getting some joy with these unders at the moment. Itamendi with few options late in the stall count and can't quite bring that in. The disc hits the turf. I think he maybe looked whether he was calling a foul with Millard coming through, but I don't think there's much Millard could have done about that.
Yeah, Khan and Millard both hailing from Loughborough and LED, so they'll know what each other likes to do on offence and on defence. So Millard shut Khan's options down there.
Knight with the disc, comes back to Lou. And back to Knight. Who shoots across the field to Alex Greer. Greer goes deep looking for Millard. It's going to be right at the back of the end zone. Millard can't get that, can't toe that back in. I think maybe he'd seen he was already definitely going to be out of bounds and didn't quite go for the catch.
Yeah, Khan had lost his footing, which meant Millard had been able to take off deep. Amala sort of stepped off to try and help a little bit, which meant Greer's option. Greer was wide open, to take the throw, but just put too much on it, which meant Millard had to really think about his feet as well as the catch. So we will see what Amala and the rest of Deep Space can do, see if they can get the break.
Yeah, I think Greer was trying to put edge on that to get it around Amala, who'd sagged off. Couldn't quite bend it around enough to secure it. Itamendi takes off. Millard trailing. Itamendi definitely had steps there, but would have been a very, very difficult throw right over the stack. Itamendi gets it underneath instead, looking for Denniston. Denniston on the sideline, looks for Khan. Greer's there. Greer knocks it away. Another turnover for the Deep Space O-line. That's 2 points in a row where they've turned over twice.
Yeah, I think Denniston had initially looked at Fee-Ray going deep, but then saw the player coming down the line. Greer read that play really well and just got in the way, knocking the disc out of bounds.
So Dom Knight on the disc, looking for an option off the front of the stack. Reading playing this 1-6. Goes across the field to Millard. Piper comes out the stack. Millard with few options, but an around break to Lou. That is absolutely picture perfect, and Lou Going deep looking for Piper, but that comes out all wrong. And deep space pinned in their own end zone.
Yeah, Caudron did well to come in and poach in the lane, but it did mean Piper was free to take off deep as she did. Lou saw it, recognised it, but just the execution on that throw wasn't quite up to the standard that needed to get to Caudron. So
a turnover back to deep space. Kat mentioned earlier the wind was not really that strong. It has picked up slightly. It's deep space is back at the moment. It's still not as strong as we have seen in the past. As I say that, Amala tries to get on the break side for Denniston, and Denniston laying out, can't get there.
Yeah, multiple turns for both lines this point. See who could be the person to score and end it, and give the players a rest.
So Knight finds Klima off the front of the stack in Reading's 1-6 set. Lou with the disc now, another inside throw. Looking for an option. Goes around to Knight. Knight's going to have to lay out to get there. Can't get there. It's 3 turnovers apiece. Knight stays on the disc and fouls Itamendi. Laying out to try and get there. You see the groans of the crowd as it... I don't think it was intentional, but it certainly didn't look great. But he's just laying out to try and get that, stop that throw.
Trying to redeem his unsuccessful layout attempt on the disc earlier.
So Itamendi with the disc after the accepted foul. Baker now in the centre of the field. Baker with an inside shot to Khan. Khan marked by Greer now after some switching around in this very long point. And Khan looking for Caudron. That's the 4th turnover for Deep Space's O-line here.
Yeah, several throws on both teams have been just overthrown. Maybe they're expecting quite a lot from their teammates at this point in the game. Both teams had 3 games yesterday, so shouldn't be too tired, but we'll see as Knight picks up.
Knight going down the line for Klima and another turnover. This is becoming quite a messy point. Both teams, I would imagine, at this point are going to be pretty tired, and it's just going to get messier.
Is a timeout going to be called? Yes.
It is indeed. A timeout is called. So the teams will take a break here, and while the teams are taking a break, it is 6-5 to Reading here. I'll update you on the other semi-final, which is not being streamed. We don't have live scoring here. That is between Lemmings and Smog, 3-time reigning national champion Smog. Smog started on offense, but the score is now Lemmings 7, Smog 3. Lemmings are 4 breaks up. Young team from Leamington already qualified for EUCF, but they are starting strong. They've been looking very impressive in this tournament, but Smog, the 3-time reigning champions, a lot of experienced players on that team. I'm sure they'll be roaring back into that contest as we continue going on.
Yeah, at the mixed regionals in the north, Smog beat Lemmings, you could argue comfortably, 11-6. So this is quite the turn of events. We will see how that game unfolds later on. Games for all divisions today are 1 hour 20 minutes to 15. Yesterday the women's division, because of the size of the pools, were playing 50-minute games to 13, but now everybody is playing 1 hour 20 games to 15.
So both these teams, Reading and Deep Space, have been in the final many times. Smog, obviously, 3-time national champions, have been in the final many times. They've won 3 finals. They've also lost a few. I think they lost against Reading. They've lost against Black Eagles. So they've been there a few times. Very experienced team, knows what it takes to win this tournament. Lemmings are the team in the semis that have never been to that stage before, have never made the national final. So it will be quite an achievement for what is still a very young team if they're able to do so.
Yeah, Lemmings have had a huge amount of development through Nate Sanders and Meg Daly, particularly in the last few years, making sure that they can represent across. And they've had a lot of intake in the junior divisions as well, showcasing the talent in the Midlands.
Talking of the talent in the Midlands, Lemmings have just broken to take half. So it is 8-3 in that game to Leamington Lemmings. So 11 points scored in both games, but this one much more even distribution, 6-5 to Reading. It's Deep Space out on offense. It's a Deep Space O point, but both teams have turned it 4 times in this point. So Deep Space taking a break to kind of gather themselves, and they're coming back out in this familiar vertical stack with Denniston at the front. You would imagine that's where the movement is going to be coming from to start. Denniston goes down the line, but Amala fakes that. Comes back to Caudron instead. Caudron in the centre of the field. Amala. Greer looking downfield. Trying to shut off options there. Comes around to Khan. Khan looking at the inside channel, comes back to Amala. Bleeds as much as he can out of that throw, many yards as possible. Denniston on the sideline. Goes to Amala. Lovely trust throw there from Denniston. Amala outside the end zone. Looking at Denniston. Instead breaks to Caudron. Caudron sets herself underneath it. Looks for a break option that's not there. Throws across the open side to Itamendi, who toes it in. And that is a hold out of that timeout for deep space. And a much needed one given how messy that point was.
Yeah, Greer and Amala there. That's quite a nice matchup. They're both similar in stature, slightly different in role for their teams, but nice to see them matching up on each other. They'll have done it. Oh no, they won't have done it much before because Amala will have played in the Open division. So nice to see different matchups being selected here.
Yeah, Axel Amala, Finnish player, went to university in Scotland, moved down to London, played with Clapham for a few years, played with them last year at WUC. So moved over to the mixed division to play with deep space here, and it looks as though there is another timeout been taken. I would suspect it's going to be Reading who've taken it, but then Reading seem to be getting on the line as normal, whereas deep space are the ones gathering. So perhaps it's them who took their second timeout of the half. But an interesting game so far. It started off with Reading struggling slightly more on the offense. They turned on the first point, then had a couple of clean holds and turned 2 more times. Whereas Deep Space had clean holds for their first 4 points. But the last couple of Deep Space offense points have been much messier. 6 turns and 2 points. Kat, do you think that's a case of Deep Space getting a little tired maybe, or do you think it's Reading making defensive adjustments?
I do think Reading have adjusted to sort of reduce Deep Space's options, but as all players, as we've played for several years, you kind of recognise what your limits are. So it could be a little bit of tiredness, but hopefully they will get a fresh line, as will Reading, to capitalise and do their best to put the next point in.
We haven't seen yet any lines you would call power lines from either team. They're sticking pretty solidly, pretty rigidly to their starting lines. Hannah Yorworth playing a lot of D for Deep Space. We saw her play on the O-line for GB Women. Similarly, we haven't really seen Wedge or Naden or Lewis or Wilson, kind of the players that can play both ways, have played both ways for GB before. They've been playing pretty solidly on the Reading O-line, not coming over to play any D points. We'll see how that changes as the game progresses. So 6-6 here. As we mentioned, Lemmings have taken an 8-3 half-time lead on Smog. We have quite a few Clapham players on the sideline here watching this semi-final. As we mentioned, Clapham have several players on their team that have either played with Deep Space, trained with Deep Space before, so know them well. Also some players on Reading and Andy Lewis and Connor Hogan, who played with Clapham previously, and that pull lands just on the right side of the line, so Withers will take it on the sideline. Looking for an option. Comes to Lewis, being marked by, as I said, there was no power lines that had really been called. Axel Amala coming out on the D-line. Also out on this D-line, marking Rachel Naden, is Layla Denniston.
Yeah, they could have put this D-line on to put them in a better position to take half, perhaps.
So I would suspect then it was Deep Space who called this timeout because they wanted to give their players a rest. And Wedge can't quite go low enough to take that one in. And it looks like an off-the-disc collision between Naden and Denniston. Looks like an inadvertent one. I'm not quite sure what happened there.
Yeah, Denniston's got her hands over her head. I don't know if she's clutching it because that's where they collided. Naden looks unfazed. Maybe has had a shoulder check, but Layla's on the ground. She's up, which is a good sign, but hobbling off might have just been a shock impact. But yeah, players are clapping her off, and we hope that she's okay.
Yeah, she's limping, so it does look as though it could be a lower body collision, maybe the hip. But she's holding her nose a bit as well. It looks like maybe she's just run into Naden, collided in several areas. But considering Deep Space called that timeout to try and get a power line on, it will be a blow to them that Dennison has come off. And we've also seen Wong off the pitch for Reading's O-line, replaced by Klima, a player with real defensive chops here, because Reading have to get this one back. Caudron, who's replaced Denniston, is marked by Naden. Caudron across to Koshov, who lays out to catch that under pressure from Wilson. Wilson putting pressure on. Koshov goes deep looking for Amala. Wilson on the mark. A lot of contact between the two, but Amala brings it down. Wilson drops off to cover Yorworth. Amala goes around to Yorworth, and that is the break for deep space. The timeout and the power line works as Amala throws the assist to Hannah Yorworth.
Yeah, you can see Phil Sunwell there is holding a rake. What they seem to chant, give me a B. The team responds, give me a rake, and holding it proudly for the first break of the game goes to deep space.
First break of the game, and we were saying deep space's offense was the one that was definitely struggling more with a lot of turnovers in the last couple of points. Reading had been pretty clean for a little while there, only 3 turnovers in the whole game, but that 4th turnover is the one that cost them. Just too low. Molly Wedge couldn't bring in the throw. It was a great pull that landed right on the sideline, pinned Reading on this sideline. Good pressure from deep space, and the power line worked beautifully, and Reading now responding by bringing over a couple of D-line players, Danny Ryle and Becky Thompson on that far end, Joe Brown as well, all been playing D so far, but coming over for a power line of their own.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this Reading line responds. These players have a wealth of experience between them, and we will see if they can put in the point, and we'll go to Universe to see who can take half.
Galaxy point. There we go. It's a phrase that is largely nonsense, but it seems to have really taken hold. So 7-6 to deep space.
And I bet deep space are happy that it's called Galaxy Point, because it would buy into their ethos. I think they have 3 lines called space-related names. One of them's Jedi, I think. So nice to have their theme running all the way through their team.
So Lewis lets the pull hit the deck. Turns down the throw to Thompson. Ryle's coming underneath with acres of space. Ryle on the disc. Wedge coming underneath with space. And it hits her on that far sideline. Reading isolating cutters in kind of a cascade. But it's just too far away out in front of Sam Wilson. He can't bring it in. It's another turnover for Reading. And deep space with another opportunity to try and take half.
Yeah, Wedge with the tough mark of Hannah Yorworth. We know that they're both experienced players, so it'll be nice to see that matchup, see how it unfolds for the rest of the point.
Naden poaching deep here. Off Kemp. Deep space trapped on the sideline. A clear space looking for Saville, but instead comes around to Ali Thomas, who was poached. And now to Kemp, also poached, taking use of those poachers. Fisher. The push pass to Vile. Vile goes deep, looking for Rowe. Rowe lays out, but I think reached the disc at the same time it hit the deck.
Yeah, Sam Vile saw Rowe take off, put the throw up. It just didn't quite have the hang that I think Rowe was expecting, which meant Rowe had to put his body on the line. Had it hung more and gone into the end zone, I think Rowe would have taken that play and taken half for deep space.
Yeah, the wind is still coming from left to right as the camera looks at it, so the wind behind Sam Vile as he threw that maybe just pushed it down more than he expected. And Ryle, foxed by the wind there, it sailed over his head. He tried to get it on the second go and couldn't wrap his hands around it. So deep space now with an absolutely brilliant chance to take half. Fisher looking for that around. Blocked off by Brown. Back to Vile. Buzz switch by Reading. Still with Fisher. Now Vile. Rowe goes to the break side, and Vile pops it over there. Rowe has to slide to catch it. Vile. Looking at the inside channel, throws a blade towards Thomas. We're going to have to be an amazing catch, but they cannot reel that in. The angle was always unfavourable for Ali Thomas there.
Some of the angles on Sam Vile's throws there, the one round to Rowe, he obviously had to put the hang time on it so that the defender couldn't get there, but it made it really difficult for Rowe to read, and he had to get down to he had to put his body on the ground to make sure. Similarly to Ali Thomas, that disc just faded away from her at that last minute.
Yeah, with Andy Thomas poaching off as well, making it even more difficult. That throw to Joe Brown, it looked like Brown had checked his cut, has to lay out to catch it. It's a real all-action point here with Lewis looking deep against the wind. Goes deep to Wilson. Yorworth tries to get her hands up to block it, but can't quite get there. Wilson brings it in, and we are, as you mentioned, Kat, going to Galaxy Point.
Yeah, Wilson there in hot pursuit of 3 or 4 of the deep space players. The male matching ones couldn't catch up. Yorworth actually had great position, but somehow the disc just went through her hands.
A timeout call by Reading, so they can copy what Deep Space did when they called a timeout between points. There, I would imagine we are going to see a full power line out from Reading here to try and get that break back to get to half on serve, because Deep Space will be coming out of the second half on offense. So they'll be looking to try and put this one in on O and get that buy one, get one free mini break to come out and extend their lead at the start of the second half. It's been quite a start to this game, Kat. Trading for, 12 points before the first break. A very dramatic end to the half and sets us up brilliantly for a second half.
Yeah, and stats-wise, the goals, we have exactly the same. We have a player from each team with 3 goals to their name. We have another player with 2, and then 2 players with 1 goal to their name. So interesting that the stats are matched at this point.
And the players with 3 goals as well, the 2 speedsters, Sam Wilson and Alvaro Otamendi. I'd like to see a race between both of them, but definitely I would say the 2 fastest players on the pitch here.
And then the players with 2 goals to their name, Denniston and Wedge, we both know they're powerhouses. We both know they are D monsters, but also fairly consistent on O. So, again, equally matched players. I don't know if we've seen them match up a huge amount yet. I know Molly plays predominantly O-line for Reading, and I actually think Layla might do the same for Deep Space, so they wouldn't naturally match up against each other, but we'll see if a power line comes out. It does look like Reading have a power line coming out on defence with Naden, Wedge, Coons, Millard, Brown, Lewis and Hagen all taking to the field.
Yep, 3 of those, Naden, Wedge and Lewis, have been O-line players throughout this game. Deep Space sticking with a normal O-line. They haven't brought any of their players over from D, and why would they? They haven't been broken so far in this game. They've managed to hold on to every single one of their O points, even when they do become slight slogs, like we saw on that 8 turnover point earlier in the game. But this is 4 half, as we see Ryan Coons, former Reading captain, former Clapham training squad member, I think, getting ready to pull. So the very slight breeze is at Reading's back here, but not much wind at all, as the pull comes towards Elliot Cook, who centres to Caudron. And it's Wedge on Caudron. Naden taking the Denniston matchup. Caudron looking downfield to Itamendi. Brown lays out but can't quite get there. Gets up quickly. Fee-Ray looking for a reset, and Amala hits the line. Finds space from Kuhn. Amala goes deep, looking for Denniston. Wedge and Naden both in pursuit. And I think Naden is the one that got there and got a hand on it. And Naden is pumped up by that.
Yeah, getting the sideline to cheer with her. This is Reading's opportunity to take half.
The shot to Denniston has been a great option every time so far, but when she is being marked by Rachel Naden, that becomes much more of a 50-50 battle than we've seen for many points in this game.
Yeah, Naden got a hand to it. Itamendi nearly could have had a second attempt, but I think was just put off by the way that Naden disturbed the disc path.
Naden with the disc now after slightly wayward throw from Millard. Breaks to Hagen. Hagen goes up and catches it. Jen Hagen has a download option to Wedge. Instead comes to Lewis. Wedge is poached in the end zone, and Amal has had to come off and mark. And it's a foul called by Lewis, and Cook accepts it immediately. Cook ducks out of the way of the disc. So Lewis on this sideline has Coons wide open because of that poach from Amala to stop Wedge scoring. So Lewis uses that. Coons now, middle of the field. Breaks to Naden, and that disc is sailing in the wind and goes over her head.
Yeah, that high release from Coons I think could have just been a little bit nicer for Naden to read. She went up to it, but as tall as Rachel Naden is, she wasn't quite tall enough to bring that disc down.
So Cook on the end zone, looks for Caudron. Lewis takes out the first option. Naden nearly gets a second bid at that throw to Denniston. Fee-Ray on this near sideline. Looking downfield to Itamendi. Itamendi turns down the break to Caudron, instead comes to Amala. Furious work downfield from these deep space cutters to try and get free. And a break to Khan, marked by Millard. Khan back to Amala. And break comes out to Itamendi, who toes it in. It's looking for the around shot to Amala. Now to Denniston. Naden gets there. And around, that lefty flick around to Khan. Fakes Cordra out the space, throws the around to Coons, trying to get there, but Amala catches it.
Yeah, Coons did all he could there to try and even put the pressure on Amala, but Amala made sure with 2 hands. That was really nice flow from deep space. At times they almost lost their reset and it looked like they were in a 1-6 position, but they made sure they were patient on their offense and really made sure with those passes. Wedge hung out there after Cordra was looked off initially, but couldn't quite get in the way of the throw to Amala.
Yeah, the throw from Khan slightly low, but Amala was able to reel it in despite the big layout bid from Coons. So deep space do take half, 8-7. With that 1 break, they will be coming out on offense in the second half. So a great half for deep space. Reading still very much in this game. 1 break is going to be getting them in it. We'll try and get you an update from the other semi-final where Smog needed a lot more than 1 break to get back into it. They were 5 breaks down against Lemmings. Lemmings took half 8-3. We'll see what we can do. Send an intrepid reporter over there to try and get something. But half-time here is Deep Space 8, Reading 7.
So the journey that Deep Space and Reading have had to get to this point. So Deep Space were in a pool with BN1 and Flight mixed. Deep Space won 15-5 against BN1 and 15-2 versus Flight mixed. Reading, on the other hand, beat Nemesis 15-6 and then went on to beat Thundering Herd 15-5. So both teams had fairly comfortable wins yesterday, and then they went into the bracket stage, which we will just get you the results of as well. Deep Space faced Glasgow mixed and the score was 15-5, and Reading matched up against Smog 2. 15-6 was that score there, so quite close or quite similarly matched mixed quarterfinals.
So that Lemmings Smog game still going on is 11-5 to Lemmings now, and Lemmings just had a drop in the end zone to get another break to go 12-5 up, and they have possession back. So Lemmings with the disc, 11-5 up on Smog, which would be not a massive surprise in terms of Lemmings winning, because Lemmings are a talented team and it looks as though they've been growing for a few years. But I think the big surprise would be the magnitude in that victory. 6-point gap is not what anyone expected in that semi-final.
No, and that would mean that the new reigning champion would be a new team. It wouldn't be Smog, who have won it for the last 3 times that Nationals has happened. Obviously, take into account 2020 when Nationals didn't happen for obvious reasons. So it'll be interesting to see if a new team can take the crown.
I mean, depending on the result of this game, if this result does stand and Deep Space do make it through to the final, that would mean we would have a guaranteed first-time winner. Neither Deep Space nor Lemmings have ever won the national championship. Reading have won on several occasions, won the European Championship on one occasion, so they're a very storied team. But neither Deep Space nor Lemmings ever won nationals. So that'd be a nice one to see who gets that first-time crown.
And we know that Lemmings and Reading both already have secured their places at the Euro Club Championships later this year. But Deep Space, Smog, and potentially, I don't know who's in the contention for 5-6 at the minute. It could be Brighton, it could be Glasgow, it could be Herd or BN1.
BN1 is Brighton. It's Smog 2 is the other team in that bracket. So those 4 teams are vying for the final EUCF spot. The top 4 already qualified, as Kat said. Reading and Lemmings, they stamp their tickets through the Elite Invite and the Spring Invite. Lemmings reaching the final there, and Reading winning Elite Invite. Whereas Deep Space and Smog have both qualified by virtue of their nationals performance. They now can't go down out to the top 4, so they'll take 2 of the 3 automatic spots on offer here at UK Nationals, which kind of doubles as a European regional qualifier, which is why some Irish teams are here in other divisions, but not in the mixed division. So Deep Space starting the second half on offense to Amala, marked again by Coons. Amala looking for an option off this sideline. Goes back to Cordra and sits up, and Cordra with a great layout catch. disc sat up just enough to make it possible, but it still had to be caught, and she did a great job. Amala again. Big hammer over to Cook. Cook's got space. And there it is. That's the buy one, get one free. 2-point lead for Deep Space. They are up 9-7, and Reading now have to find 2 breaks just to get back into this game.
Yeah, Cordron did a spectacular layout grab there just to make sure, had to put a body on the line to secure that disc. And then that throw from Amala. Cook just wide open on that break side, took that opportunity. We know he has a range of throws in his arsenal, does Amala, and using it to great effect for that score for Deep Space.
Yeah, Hill slightly further away, trying to make sure that Cook doesn't come into the open side, doesn't go back into the handler space, and when you're taking away the open side, you're taking away the handler space, you are giving something up. Amala spots it and puts it on a plate for him. So a 9-7 lead for Deep Space. So 2 breaks for Reading here, or so a hold here and then a break, and they're only back to level terms. They need 2 breaks to answer Deep Space's 1.
Yeah, so Reading O-line coming back out, see if they can add to their earlier consistency.
Yep, a familiar O-line for Reading. Back to the kind of usual line calling after calling those power lines at the end of the first half to try and snatch back that break that Deep Space took to go 7-6 up. So 9-7 to Deep Space. Pull from Archer. You can see the wind slightly picking up, that pull bouncing a couple of times in the air. And Hogan walks to the... with the disc on the sideline, has a deep option but doesn't like it. Doesn't like that inside channel to Archer either. Looks at Gilboy, marked by Hogan. Now looking for Sandwell, marked by Lewis. Naden poaching to try and get in front of that throw to Yorworth, but Yorworth concentrates all the way through and brings it in. The Reading O-line again making it difficult for Deep Space's D-line. Gilboy has Yorworth. Yorworth looking for an option now, but Gilboy can't get free of Hogan. Yorworth tries to throw that inside across the Lee, but Naden in the way.
Yeah, Rachel Naden read that play beautifully. I think she saw what Yorworth wanted to do. She knows what Yorworth is capable of with those low release breaks, and just put her arms in the way to turn the disc over.
Hogan underneath to Lewis again. Naden underneath, marked tightly by Yorworth. Lewis goes across the field. Collins waits for it with plenty of time. Deep Space still doing some of that switching downfield, so Archer was not in position to contest it. Wong now. Wong to Wilson. Wilson looking for an option. Lewis. Deep Space doing a good job of limiting Reading's options here and keeping them downfield. Lewis fakes that big shot. And does go deep in the end, looking for Hogan. Gilboy's in the area as well, but Hogan takes it down, and Hogan to wedge. Gets the hold, but there is a stall out called by Phil Sandwell on the throw by Lewis.
Yeah, that definitely wasn't Lewis's first choice of option, but I think having played with Hogan many times, and we've seen that connection before from Hogan being the receiver and Lewis being the thrower, I think Hogan knew that might be coming, so he positioned himself well to go and grab that disc that came deep. But as we say, Lewis held onto that disc for quite a while. His options were shut down, and Phil Sandwell called the stall out.
So it looks as though Lewis is saying it came out of his hand. You often see this with stall out calls, don't you, Kat? They're very rarely uncontested.
Yeah.
So the score in the Lemmings-Smog game, as I say, there was a drop for Lemmings to get a break to go up 12-5, but they are now up 12-6. Smog getting back into the game slightly, but still looking precarious for the reigning champions. They are going to need to go on quite a run to come back into that, and it's a contested stall out here. But yeah, there's 12-6 to Lemmings. It's the writing starting to be on the wall for that one, Kat.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know in the women's division, the semis will be Iceni versus somebody and Spice versus a winner of a different game. But the open final is set. It is Chevy and Clapham. What a surprise.
Yeah, happened before. Lewis had no other option really than to go deep again with the high stall on the contested stall. Goes to Hogan, but the wind sits it up and it drops into Gilboy's hands, and Sandwell leaves his feet to reel in that throw from Gilboy. Lewis blocks off that dump option. And it's to Gilboy after Hogan shut down 2 or 3 options there. Gilboy goes deep, looking for Yorworth, but that's going to drift too far. Collins makes sure, but I think that was always going to be out of Yorworth's reach.
Yeah, credit to Phil Sandwell there. He lost his footing, but still from the ground was able to make that catch. Got it to Gilboy. Gilboy saw Yorworth taken off, but the throw just was too far on this occasion. They are going against the wind, which meant Gilboy probably had to put even more spin on it to get it to go, but even then it was still too far.
Yeah, rather than a kind of a gale here, it's very much a swirling breeze. It's quite difficult for both teams to read at the moment. But Naden, hugely poached after more deep space switching downfield. Yep. Has loads of time. Really
smart from the deep space ladies just to contain and shut off or reduce the options for the Reading women.
Sam Wilson comes infield to Hogan. Lewis is taken off deep, and Hogan takes that option, looking for Lewis, but it's going to go too far. Land in the end zone, just 5 meters ahead of Lewis or something.
Yeah, Hogan has a powerful arm. Obviously saw Lewis taking off, wanted to offer the switch of what happened earlier. But yeah, as you say, Sean, that was too far ahead of Andy Lewis.
A messy point. This is the most turnovers we've seen on a Reading O point so far. They've been pretty clean, obviously been broken, but that was one turn. It's a little all over the place from Reading at the moment. It looks as though Tim Gilboy is indicating that he will be calling a timeout, so we will have another break. But this is another big point for deep space. If they can get this and go 3 points up, obviously that puts them in a very powerful position.
Yeah, we've got about 15 minutes left of this game, just give or take. So not a huge amount of time left to see who will go on into the final.
So as Kat says, we have the open final all set, a final that we've seen many, many times. We will see if we have a result that we've never seen before. Clapham 21 national championships in a row, I believe, at this stage. Never lost at UK Nationals. Chevron have made the final, I can't remember exactly how many times, but it must be double-digit times at this point. But not been able to get that win. And then in the women's division, which will be coming up, I believe, in the next game slot, we have Iceni and Spice. They're already qualified, already through to the semis. Both of them already qualified for EUCF. They have 2 of the 4 spots that are on offer here, with Gravity having already secured one through the spring invite. LMU, the reigning champions, are going to be playing against SICK in a kind of a qualifier for the quarterfinal. The winner there plays Iceni. And then on the other side, it'll be Bristol against Gravity. Gravity with a reduced squad here. They are missing several people because of a wedding. So they'll be playing with 10 players, I believe. We saw them on the stream yesterday. 10 players putting an absolute hero's effort in to try and get to the semi-final. But I suspect they might find it tough going against a very talented Bristol team that has added Tessa Hunt, GB World Games training squad member, long-time Smog player, has come back from travelling and is playing with Bristol. So the winner there will be playing against Spice in the semi-final. So could be interesting. The reigning champions still in the mix. Spice have never made a national final before. SICK haven't made one in a while. Iceni last made one in 2021. They haven't won a championship since 2018, I think. So yeah, it was quite a bit of movement in the women's division. Could be making for an exciting final closing stages there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We know it's hotly contested. It's great that there's all that talent in the women's division, showing these teams have developed and grown over the last few years. So really, really exciting to see who will end up in that final.
So Gilboy on the disc, centres to Koshov. That dropped right at his feet, didn't it? To go down at the last minute. Archer, right in her own end zone, looking for an option. Looking for Gilboy with Hogan right on his shoulder. But that throw comes in and Gilboy goes deep. Sam Wilson maxed that on. And that's going to cost Reading a fair few yards. In fact, that's going to end up with it taking the disc right outside their own end zone rather than at midfield.
Yeah, Gilboy saw Thacker take off, and we know she's quick, but I think the wind just got the better of his throw, which meant it came out short. Sam Wilson, as you said, macked the disc, but there wasn't a deep space player in the near vicinity to go and chase after it. So it does mean Reading have the disc there.
I dare say when Gilboy released that, if you had told him that you're getting the Reading are getting it right outside their end zone, he probably would have taken that, to be honest with you. That's not a terrible outcome, considering the position they were in. Hogan comes up the line. Lewis instead goes across the field to a poached Naden. Naden inside her own end zone now. Comes to Wong. Wong extends an arm out there but can't reel it in deep space with a short field. Koshoff picks it up to go quickly. Wilson and Hogan both go with Gilboy. And Sandwell throws it to Thacker, and Thacker catches the easy clap catch score for another break in deep space. They're up 10-7 and in a commanding position here.
Yeah, Thacker's first stat on the board, I believe, even though we know she's been running her heart out on the pitch. But yeah, that is another break, I believe, for deep space.
Yeah, deep space's second break. Reading haven't got any breaks so far. They are going to need 3 to win this game now. They need to hold this, come out here and get 3 breaks, because deep space have put themselves in a great position fairly late in this game. There's only 10 or so minutes left here, and they are 3 points up.
Exciting time. We will see what Reading do to respond. Do they bring a power line? I think it's a sensible thing to do. I don't believe a timeout's been called just yet, but you would want Reading all uniform there in support of one another, and we hope that it continues to be that hotly contested match that we have seen so far.
So Ryle, Brown, Thompson and Klima coming over from the Reading D-line. Naden, Wilson, Lewis all staying on the pitch. So both Reading's captains on this line, Lewis and Klima. Deep space coming out with a normal D-line. We've seen all these players play on the D for deep space so far in this game. Sam Vile will be pulling. We've got Rowe, Fisher and Moss on the male matching side. On the female matching side we have Kemp, Jan and Thomas.
Nick Moss representing on the GB Mixed Master stage later this year in October in Italy. Just a notable mention there.
Had to bring that one up, as we're both on the team as well. And Sam Wilson drops the first pass from Andy Lewis. Sam Vile picks it up, and deep space have an opportunity here for an immediate, and a slip from Andy Lewis means that So catches it. Another clap catch on the front cone from Sam Vile, and Reading are now down 7-11, and you would imagine there's going to be a timeout called here. Indeed, Kalina does indicate a timeout. 11-7 to deep space, and this is getting worse and worse for Reading at the moment.
Yeah, Joe Brown had set off deep, being marked by Tom Fisher, and I don't think neither of them had realised there was a turn so close to the end zone. They just had to watch what happened, the play unfold between deep space and Reading, and as you say, Andy Lewis lost his footing, which meant that pass to the front corner was easy. So
11-7 to deep space. Can't say this is a score I expected. I expect this to be a very close game throughout. I thought it'd be 1 or 2 points in it pretty much the whole way. Both these teams have been in really good form at this championships, but Reading's offense kind of falling apart slightly from 6-6, where they've been trading all the way through. It's been a 5-1 run from there to deep space.
Yeah, your prediction was correct for that first half. It was trading every single point. There were obviously some breaks, and deep space took half, but since the half it has been the deep space train. Reading are yet to score in the second half of the game.
So they'll be trying to balance themselves, trying to centre themselves. This is a Reading team that won elite invite, played against some of the best teams in Europe and was able to beat them. They've been kind of building to this point, and they haven't been at totally full strength yet. They're very close here. They're only missing Helen Roberts, a central part of their O-line, but she's got an injury that was kind of aggravated at EUC with GB Mixed. They've got enough talent and experience to kind of get back into this game, but Deep Space are going to be hungry, trying to get back to the final for the first time since 21, I believe.
Yeah, and you can hear when deep space, they are getting loud. They are getting really in support of their team. Reading is a slight bit quieter, but they do celebrate when those turns come. And we know how tight knit Reading are. They trust their players. They support one another. So we just hope that they can maybe make this game a little bit closer than it is currently.
So back to a normal O-line for Reading. While deep space, same. We've just got a normal D-line. Actually, a couple of the same players that were out on the last point. Moss and Vile, both out again. Vile getting ready to pull. So 11-7 to deep space, and Reading in desperate need of a hold to get themselves on the board for the first time in the second half. Reading running a set play. Sandwell drops off the mark to prevent it. And Withers throws behind wedge. Just a simple execution error, giving deep space the disc back again. Sam Vile picks it up. The GB mix player looking to find an option. Throws that inside channel to Nick Moss. Moss to Sandwell. Sandwell around the force back to Moss. Moss fakes to Vile. Looking for an option downfield. Hasn't really got much on. Throws to Hill, but Hill drops it. There was a pick going to be called, but that's been retracted in turnover stands.
Yeah, there was a lot of traffic, a lot of Kofstov also coming back from that throw, and I wonder if just hearing the stamps of other people just put Hill off maybe making that catch.
Hill inside to Naden. Kemp right on her shoulder. Naden looking deep, fakes it. Goes to wedge. Very flat marks from deep space at the moment, preventing that downfield movement. Lewis wide open. Goes deep to Molly Wedge. Beam out by Hannah Yorworth, and Yorworth in position there. Extends those arms out and takes it away from Wedge.
Yeah, nice. I saw what Andy Lewis tried to do there, but the throw just a little bit short, and Yorworth already had that position and was able to get the disc before Molly Wedge even had a chance to make a play.
So deep space with another opportunity here. Hill with the disc. Near her own end zone. Options taken away by Reading poachers, and Lewis lays out to try and stop the disc getting to Vile, but Vile throws straight to Wilson, poaching underneath. Wilson now with the disc just outside the end zone to Wedge. Reading filing through, and you can see the disc kind of jumping and moving around in the air. The wind is picking up, coming from our left to right as the camera looks at it. And Withers throws the around to Hogan, and that's just not going to get there. It's too low, too far out in front. Very difficult to read and very unforgiving.
Yeah, you can see that Reading, this O-line are trying to play really smart defence, taking those switches when they can, poaching in the lane for a second. Andy Lewis has bid there. They know that they need to turn deep space to... they know they need to turn deep space in order to get the point.
And the deep space D-line has taken a timeout to try and put a play together, have a bit of a rest, and you can see the Reading O-line players, I think there's 6 of them with their hands on their hips, kind of standing in disbelief, because the turnovers that they've thrown in this point have just been pretty simple execution errors. One behind wedge, that shot to Hogan, it might work, but when you're throwing it that low with that much spin, there's just no chance he has a second bid on it. So if the first one isn't perfect, and it wasn't, he has no option of trying to get there.
Hogan also took an injury during EUC. I know it meant he was out for several games. I'm not entirely sure what the injury was, but again, he might still be feeling the effects of that. His hamstring. He might still be feeling the effects of that, which maybe meant he couldn't put his body on the line on that occasion. But we've seen him do it before. Huge highlight play from last year's final against Groot at Euros. So we know he's capable of it, but just might be nursing that injury, thinking about preservation and conservation, more importantly, for Euros in a few weeks' time.
So Reading really struggling to put points away in the second half here. It's 11-7 to deep space, and they have the disc to try and come out and get this score to put themselves up by 5 points and make this a tall task even for a team the talent of Reading. So Reading's O-line will be talking about how to try and get this back. We've seen so far the deep space D-line, they've got 3 breaks, 2 of them clean, but 1 in the second half a couple of points ago. There were a lot of turns in that point. So they're capable of putting them away when they have to grind for it. Deep space's D-line. And I think Kat has gone over to check on the other semi-final. What's the score over there?
Will you believe it? It is 14-8 to Lemming. So they are 1 point away from closing that game out and securing their spot in the final.
So 7 chances for Lemmings to get to the final. And it's 14-8. 6 points means that Smog haven't really reduced that deficit at any point in the second half. It's just been trading a lot in the second half. Lemmings, a young team, been doing really well for a couple of years now, but they are going to be coming out 7 times to try and reach the national final, which is just a fantastic outcome for them.
Yeah, they're a team with a hell of amount of talent, and it'll be really exciting to see them get to their first ever national final. Obviously, commiserations to Smog if they don't, but equally Lemmings have clearly done something to show why they deserve to be there.
So a poachy set from Reading coming out this timeout. Sam Wilson hanging out deep to prevent those deep shots. It goes anyway. Naden attacks it and does just enough to put Kemp off. Did hit Kemp, but I think Kemp was expecting Naden to get something on it. Couldn't reel it in, but that could have been a hell of an outcome for the deep space D-line.
Yeah, we know how good Rachel Naden is in the air, and I think, as you say, she did enough to put Kemp off. Kemp still got her hands to the disc, but may have just been a little bit flustered.
Hogan with the disc. Over to the poached Lewis. Lewis looking for an option. Wilson took off deep, had space, but comes to Naden instead. Naden fakes the deep. Comes back inside to the middle of the pitch to Lewis. Hogan takes off deep now. 2 go with him, so Wilson's poached. But it doesn't get to him. Wedge takes it instead. Wedge looking downfield, but now looking at Lewis. Lewis with the disc. Wongs. Wilson. Doesn't want to come back to Wong. Does eventually. Lewis again. Lewis to Naden with Kemp right on her shoulder. Naden to Withers. Withers on this sideline. Turns down that shot to Wedge. Instead throws the inside to Wilson, who has to stand still to catch it. Hogan gets free of Moss. Just outside the end zone now. Connor Hogan looking for an option. Fakes the around to Wong. Wilson spots some space, flies into it, and a huge layout bid for Nikki Koshoff. Knocks the disc away. Wilson can't bring it in, and Deep Space have another chance.
Yeah, redeeming that earlier Callahan he threw. We know that Koshoff has played with Wilson on the GB Mix team earlier this year, so we know that these two players probably have matched up in training and know what the other is capable of. But yeah, Koshoff denied Wilson that disc there.
So Vile picking it up in the end zone. Tries to go to Sandwell with it inside. It pops up. There's a big pack underneath it, and it's Wilson who comes down with it. Back to Hogan. Trying to slow things and calm things down. Withers on the sideline. Wedge has space in the end zone. Withers throws to Wedge. Nice, simple catch for Wedge in the end zone after a helter-skelter point. Both teams all over the place. You see people on both teams with their hands on their knees, sucking in air after what must have been a pretty demanding point.
Yeah, Ben Withers, number 7, with the score. With the assist, and Molly Wedge, number 5, with the score there, giving Reading their first point after half. So it is 11 to Deep Space, 8 to Reading.
First point after half for Reading. I believe the hooter went during that point. So with the hooter going during the point, that means we are rapidly approaching the end of the game. And with Deep Space in a pretty fantastic position. The Deep Space O-line going to be coming out to win this game. They've turned over 7 times in this game, the Deep Space O-line, whereas the Reading O-line has turned over 15 times, which just shows you the big difference in execution so far. The conversions, Reading have had 3 chances to try and get a break. Haven't been able to take any of them yet, whereas Deep Space do have those breaks. And the second half has been going very well for them. So 11-8 to Deep Space, and they now have several chances to win this game. They've got 4 shots.
Yeah, so we've got Reading coming out on D, Becky Thompson with the pull, game to 12.
And it's a standard D-line for Reading. Amala with the disc. Kleemer on Denniston downfield, and Brown calls a pick going to Itamendi.
Disc was quite low there. I wasn't sure if someone was going to try and call it down, but obviously the pick is what happened first.
So Brown coming around, following Itamendi. Denniston was kind of in the vicinity. There was space to run through, but Brown would have had to adjust his line to run through Klima and Denniston, so calls the pick. And a come back to Amala, what must be a relatively low stall. Oh, it's coming in on 5. Clearly I can't count. Amala goes deep, looking for Denniston. And it's going to be drifting out towards the sideline. Denniston lays out. I think even if Denniston catches that, she would have been landing on the sideline. So that probably would have been out anyway. It's coming in on the end zone cone.
Yeah, just seen a few little spots of rain. Hopefully it's just a passing shower, but we know that the pitch already had some rain overnight and is a little bit slippy for some players. But Denniston there did all she could to try, but the disc just sailed out of bounds beyond her reach.
So Thompson with the disc. Not really anything on the reset for her here. Goes around to Brown. Brown catches it low. It's a huge poach from Amala on Coons, but doesn't go there. Lester with the disc. Lester to Coons. Amala hanging out deep. There's a injury called by Caudron. Coons with lots of space on this sideline. Everyone back in the position they were. And Caudron looks like it's a non-contact.
I think it might have maybe a calf. That's what she seemed to kind of grab hold of. Hopefully it's just a cramp or something minor, but we will see. Hannah Yorwith comes on to replace Caudron.
So you never want to lose a player to an injury, but that's a pretty good replacement to bring in. But yeah, it does look as though it is just cramp. Thankfully, Caudron a key central part of this deep space team. Thompson falls over on the mark, and Coons throws a hammer, which doesn't feel as though it was that high a stall. So it's a turnover on the sideline, and it's going to come in quite high up for deep space. Yeah,
Coons throwing that into the wind, so the wind was always going to push it away, which gives deep space the disc back and potentially a chance to close this game out.
A chance to close this game out. The other game has been closed out, and it's Lemmings who have won 15-9 against the 3-time reigning champion Smog. So Smog will not be in the final. These teams fighting out to try and get to the final, and Thompson comes over against the poach block on Axel Amala. Great read, great positioning, and knocks it away.
Yeah, Thompson was at the back of the sack there and just recognised that that's what Amala was looking for. The disc hung, but she had time to get there first and absolutely smacked it down to the ground.
Throws the inside to Brown. Brown now goes across the field to Millard, who takes it in front of Amala. Millard looking for an option downfield, finds Coons. Coons now looking downfield. Thompson is free in the reset space. Lester comes underneath free. Hagen to the break side. Looking at Brown again. Throws that inside. Brown can't get it. 4 Reading players try to get it, and it's Lester, the final one, who actually catches it. Back to Brown, who's open. Brown looking around. Thompson's not in enough space for him. There's Coons looking downfield. Doesn't want Klima marked by Denniston. Millard also turned down. Now it's Thompson with the disc just outside the end zone. And Lester finds some space in the end zone but can't catch that inside low throw. Itamendi starts quickly for deep space. Looking around, looking for a reset. The offhand throw to Axel Amala. Amala looking downfield. Has Denniston. Klima lays out. The disc had hit the ground anyway. And a turnover for Reading. And they take it slowly to give us a chance to catch our breath cap.
Yeah, that throw from Becky Thompson to Lester was a bullet, but that one from Amala just too short.
And Thompson goes with the around, but that's too flat and too low. Reading's D-line had a chance. Brown certainly had space, but not quite executed by Thompson. And it's going to be deep space's O-line, this time walking to the disc to give themselves a little bit of a mental break before they continue with this vital point.
Yeah, mental, physical tiredness is probably kicking in with these players. Particularly Reading, they know what this means if they don't get into the final. Obviously, they're hungry for it. But deep space have more opportunities here, so we'll see what happens on this possession.
Cook with the disc. Goes deep towards Amala. Millard in a bad position, tries to attack it, but Amala reels it in, and Itamendi is totally free in the end zone. Itamendi catches it, uncontested, and that is the game. Deep space win. They go to the final. Reading, who won at the elite invite earlier in the season, have already qualified for EUCF, but will not be in the final of UK Nationals. It will be deep space there against Lemmings, so we are guaranteed a first-time champion at this UK Nationals cap.
Yeah, wow, what a game. And that final between Lemmings and Deep Space will be at 2:30 on our stream, so we look forward to seeing you tuning in to watch that. Congratulations to Deep Space, commiserations to Reading, but it just shows that they traded all the way through half, and then the second half absolutely belonged to Deep Space. So we hope that both teams rest between now and their next games, and we look forward to seeing what will make for a really interesting and intense final.
Yeah, you can very clearly break that game into two halves. 6-6 trading for all the way to there, and then a 6-2 run from Deep Space. Some execution errors from Reading. Deep Space took advantage, and they advanced to another final. Beat Reading at the semi-final stage again. These teams have been trading semi-final wins for 3 years now, I think. So a great game to start the day out. Hopefully we'll have more for you. But for myself, Sean Colfer, and co-commentator Kat Cheng, thank you all for watching. We'll see you all again soon. But that's it for now. See you all in a bit.